people to see that. And I will insist our communities are storytellers. African Americans are known for that. Hispanics are known for it. We love telenovelas. Middle Easterns love storytelling. Storytelling is powerful in our communities.
Yeah, and I can tell you from a pretty big brand that's really well known in the general market wanted us to do specific outreach to Latino community in Tri-Cities, Yakima area. And the first thing we said was, well, how do you know, the assumption was, well, they know who we are because everybody else in the country knows who we are. So we said, well, let's go make sure that that's true. So it wasn't me, I was actually Sinar, spent and Mafe, a day and a half, talking to community organizations, community leaders, people of the community, and really kind of digging into the issue before we recommended a strategy. It wasn't as easy as an ad buy. It was, you have zero brand recognition among this community. You might have it all over the country, but you have a lot of work to do here. It's not as easy as just putting an ad up and expecting action to take place. You have to be in for the long haul and really introduce them to who your brand is.
Chris?
Yeah, and I can't agree more with a lot of things that have been set up here. I think that in terms of results and measuring, a lot of times the ethnic media is held to a much different standard than mainstream media. And like Martha says, you have to put in the time and energy and a campaign in order to receive some results. You can't just come through and do one ad and expect to have people beating down your doors. And then we also have people who always want to figure out ways to test us. They want to place a coupon or something in there and then use a number of coupons that they have received as their measurable, but how many people actually responded. Well, you're not taking into account people who walked to your door and did business, didn't bring the coupon with them, might not have left it at home, might not just want to use coupons for whatever reason. I mean, there's some in our community and other communities, people who are pretty prideful who, they've got money and they don't want to, pull it be in someplace pulling out coupons for certain things, but they will go and support the messaging that has taken place. The other thing is, we get into this thing where everybody's looking at metrics. Everybody wants to crunch numbers and they want to try and justify their ad buys. We recently were cut out of an annual ad buy one of our major advertisers because they had an ad agency that went through and started crunching numbers, and they kicked us out based upon what they call duplication in the marketplace and zip codes that we were in. Well, if you're comparing, our 98144 zip code against the Seattle Times 98144 zip code and 98118 and 98178, yeah, it's going to look like, you've got enough coverage in there and that we're, you're reaching the same people that in that zip code because you're already doing business with these other publications. Well, the fact of the matter is, and she looked at the thing before, that 84 or 91% of African Americans said that they see more credibility in African American newspapers, and people who are doing business with African American newspapers, they tend to do business with as well. And so if they're not seeing that messaging because they're not picking up these other publications, then there is no duplication overlap. But if people got to start actually having these relationships, knowing what's going on in these neighborhoods and in the industry, to know that I'm not going to reach majorities of African Americans in the zip code unless I'm utilizing the proper media to do so. And so that's one of the things that we have to work in. We constantly have to educate media buyers about this and plead our case and give our story about it. The other thing is when as far as measurables are concerned, a lot of the biggest measurables you have is when somebody approaches you and they want to have some type of event and they want you to promote. And we have newspapers and radio stations in the market, so whether they want you to do a remote or they want you to just have the newspaper do a combination of the two, and then have this event and then they're just surprised the number of people who show up to this event. A lot of times, we'll outpace a similar event they held in the majority community, even though they spent far less money with us than they spent with the other media that they had. And they're like, just overwhelmed, like, wow, this is great, we need to do it again and again. But on the flip side of that is we need those people who have those success stories to be able to tell our story to their colleagues in this industry, saying we had a lot of success with International Examiner, we had a lot of success with the Seattle Medium and KRZ Radio, we had a lot of success with Mundo, and we had this event and 10,000 people showed up, or 1,100 people showed up, whatever the metrics are that you're using that showed up, and we were able to get a good return on our investment. And so others can follow suit and start doing business with us as well, because certainly if you get the information to yourself, you're going to be the only person who benefits from it. But then, what happens when you move on and nobody else is there to take the mantle in your place, and you have elected information there as well. So I think those are some of the things that we actually fighting. So we do need you guys on the other side to sit there and help tell our story, so that we can have the resources to produce more of the positive images in our community. We have the resources to expand our staff to do more. I mean, it's a reciprocal relationship, but oftentimes, from our perspective, it's not a reciprocal relationship. It's a one-way relationship where you're getting a lot of things, but we a lot of times don't get very much anything. It's like, people are quick to send us a press release and pitch us on information, but then when you turn around and ask them if they have an ad buy that goes along with this, they're like, well, the ad buy's already been taken care of. So, but we'd appreciate if you were able to get this in for us. And so a lot of times you're caught in the crossroads because it's like, okay, the information needs to get out to our community, but at the same time, it's like you don't respect us enough to include us in an ad buy, but we're good enough for you to do all the free stuff for us. So.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sian?
Yeah, I think it's also important to think about when you're talking about evaluation is not just the ad buy metrics, but also the penetration of the message from your content. And knowing when is your content getting a little bit stale, when do you need to switch it up. Talk to your key stakeholders and some of your community members to find out from them, does this message still work? If it doesn't, what would you recommend? What are people talking about right now? And then switch it up and then go back to them. And so it's important to just really think about that in terms of content. And also there's, social is a great tool for looking at your metrics and whether new demographics have been reached. So with Facebook, if you've done any sort of promotion, you can see, you can essentially see when you target certain demographics, those demographics will be flipped when you do those promotions. So it's a really important tool to find out who are these new audiences who are interested, who would be engaged if we did reach out to them.
Thank you. So what collateral should communicators have in their toolkit before engaging ethnic media? What should they be thinking about? Amalia?
We touched on this earlier, but making sure that you have whatever imagery or whatever graphics is going out to that community resonates with that community. So we always said we're here to make sure that there's no sombreros on any Latino ads. We are really passionate about aspirational imagery, aspirational messages, aspirational communications. So that's a big deal. Sometimes we'll get something from a company and they'll say, can you just translate the headline? No, we cannot. So in our office, we're a mighty 5 small, but we represent 5 different countries. And I am the weakest Spanish speaker of the bunch, so I'm not even gonna try. But I can tell you when we get a campaign to adapt into Spanish, there is a ton of conversation about that headline. And Sinara's from Dominican Republic, Mafi's from Costa Rica, Maria's from Mexico, Nari's from Venezuela, and they will argue over a word for like 20 minutes. So making sure whatever that headline is works. It's not Google Translated. Please, anything you take away today, do not use Google Translator. Hire someone who knows exactly what they're doing and who is not just a native speaker, but has a background is actually a communicator, is in PR or advertising or marketing, that can adapt that and then make sure whatever the deliverable as a whole is culturally competent and aspirational. Please,
Joaquin?
So I think one of the things that, I'm kind of a communications armchair academic geek. One of my favorite speakers about advertising is Thomas Burrell. Anyone know him? He's an African-American communicator. And one of his famous statements is that black people are not dark-skinned white people, right? And same thing with any immigrant or ethnic community, right? Filipinos are not darker, more jovial white people. We have cultural issues. The issues that we're concerned about are the same. Education, housing, affordability. That's what we got. We got that. But in terms of the things we respond to, the things we connect to, the pictures that we see and that fills our heart with warmth, that will vary from community to community. And that's where it's important. That's why you have to do this due diligence from the beginning so that you people, the advisory group or whoever, can catch these ads and figure out the best ways to do this and argue over images and words for 20 minutes. Those are my kind of people. I love arguing over words. And doing that is really key. And again, the whole thing of taking something and Google translating it, or just taking a stock image of a person of color and putting that on there, that speaks to this issue of, I'm just saying, it's like white supremacy. It's saying that like white people are the norm and that people of color are this other thing that is like, different and not the norm. Like, no, it just means that everyone's on the same playing field. Everyone has hopes and dreams and desires like everyone else. And so it's up to all of us to figure that out and to really put the minds together and have those discussions and have the ads that speak to that. And so, having advisory groups about that, talking about these issues, seeing what the research is out there saying, and putting that in from the get is important. And then, so for folks who are part of ethnic media, though, I will say one thing that would be really helpful, and I hear this a lot from departments all around the city, is that they'll go to your website and the whole website will be in Chinese or Spanish, and they'll get scared, because typically they're not, that language speaker, and they'll be like, I don't know what the media kit is, I don't know what to do. So if you can just put in English, just the media kit, you can just put it even in the corner, media kit, like 2000 whatever, and then contact information